Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third webinar. This time we are looking at preparing for September. It's an EdTech question and answer session for you this afternoon, and we'll be looking at using technology in a blended learning approach. I'm Andrew Pridmore, head teacher at Elizabeth Woodville Primary School, one of the EdTech demonstrator schools and colleges. I'd like to introduce James and Sarah Crowhurst, who are part of the panel today and part of our EdTech team here at Elizabeth Woodville. And we're going to do our best to take you through a range of questions that we think a lot of schools will be thinking about over the next few weeks in preparation for September. So welcome, Sarah, and welcome, James.
Hi.
Hi.
So without further ado, we will make a start while James just sorts the technical hitch on his camera. So we'll take a look, and one of the things that's prompted this, and we'll just go full screen so you can see this, is the guidance from the Department for Education. So published on the 2nd of July. This is the latest we have at the time we've gone live. And these two paragraphs, I think, are the key ones that I think most schools are thinking about at this time. So remote education may need a digital component in the delivery of the school curriculum for some pupils, now alongside classroom teaching, or in the case of a local lockdown. So all schools are therefore expected to plan to ensure any pupils educated at home for some of the time are given the support they need to master the curriculum and so make good progress. And so all the questions that we'll be answering across this webinar will actually be coming away from those two statements. I think this is the key things that we're going to have to address going forwards. And for schools, it does mean that some schools already have this capability. They'll be using it, and those skills, they can be utilized brilliantly for when local lockdowns are in place, or perhaps bubbles are isolated to continue that home learning. However, other schools aren't going to be in a stronger position, and they're going to need to look at the capability and how to increase that very, very quickly. So I think we shall make a start on the first question, if you're both happy to do that.
Yeah.
So looking at the first question. So very simply, how can you ensure that remote education is high quality and aligns closely with your in-school provision? So we're going to think carefully about that. So what do we do? So how do you make sure that remote education is high quality? We're going to be concentrating on first getting children back into school, making sure we're doing that in as safe a way as possible. But alongside that, it does now show that a blended learning approach is of increasing importance. So what do we think? And I think I'll come, Sarah, to you first. What do we think about how we ensure remote education is high quality and matches our school curriculum?
I think, first of all, teachers are fantastic at being creative when they plan. So if teachers sit down in August and they're going through their weekly plan, and it's naturally going to be high quality, then all they need to do is shift a little bit of their thinking around their weekly plan to taking it to a remote learning situation. So they might just need to tweak some activities, but the input is exactly the same. So when it just depends how you deliver it. So as a teacher, you're delivering to pupils. Remotely, you'll be delivering a little bit differently. You need to record yourself, but that input stays the same. And it's just a matter of tweaking it very slightly to move it onto your learning platform.
I think you're absolutely right. I think technology is just the vehicle for reaching those children at home. The teaching, the resource, the teacher, all the work you do, it's no different, is it? It's no different.
No.
James, bringing you in on this, I mean, that's some of the success we've had is about making technology as simple as possible, particularly for teachers who aren't as used to using it in a variety of ways.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. So it's very important that the technology is there and ready to be used, and the teachers are au fait with using that technology, so that they're confident to be able to just very quickly move from that in-school input to that remote input, and that's very important. So obviously spend a little bit of time when planning the lessons, just ensuring that you're au fait with those products and software that are out there to be able to do that is really important.
And I think what you find as well as teachers, the more you get used to something, teachers are very quick at adapting.
Yeah.
Once they've tried things a few times, and our job, particularly in the IT departments and the computing departments, is to give confidence to the staff that these systems work. And if the systems work, then actually that confidence grows, and we can do more, and we can develop how we approach home learning in a wider way. So obviously embarking on things like live lessons, and once you've done a few live lessons, you'll be perhaps using interactive whiteboards like Jamboard within lessons, but it can start very simply, can't it? And one of the best places to start really is just to, as you say, Sarah, just video with the board behind you and teach as you would normally. That is a great way to start. And I think what we would do is say in your schools, have a team ready just to support your teaching team in just adapting as you need to the lessons they've already planned for being broadcast online in whatever capacity you want to. It's great if you've got a learning management system to be able to develop that, because not everything can be face-to-face and online. And so a blended approach becomes even more important. But have some face-to-face times, even if it's just simply recording you at the front and being interactive. But that can move on very quickly to using either Microsoft Teams or obviously Google Meet, to doing some live lessons very simply. And as you've seen from some of our previous webinars, that's something that can be very effective and very easy to get off the ground from scratch. So I think we've shown the way to align it closely within school provision is actually to adapt from what you're already planning and move from there, rather than thinking about doing anything separate. And I'm sure everyone would agree with that as being the approach. So moving past that, we've got our next question. And this one is for those schools that perhaps haven't had as much time to develop remote learning capabilities. You know, we're working with schools across the country, some of which are in very rural locations, and have had to develop infrastructure first, or perhaps haven't got the devices that other schools have. So we're looking at recommendations now for schools that have got to build their remote learning capabilities very, very quickly. And I think, James, this time I'll start with you. Right from the ground up, what should schools be thinking about to ramp up their remote learning capability as quickly as possible?
So it's very important to have a learning management system or a learning platform. They both mean a very similar thing, like Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams, or things like Seesaw or Canvas, these are the ones out there. And it's no longer acceptable to be able to just email work out or put it on a website. You need a learning management platform that's there, that's capable of being able to put activities on or lessons on there related to what we just said in the first question with the input, with videos, and then for the children to be able to respond to those through an activity. And obviously different platforms work in slightly different ways, but they all have the same concept at the end, at the back end of it, where they are looking for a activity at the start or an input at the start, then the activity, and then that can be marked by the teacher. And these platforms and systems are all online, so they're all accessible via all types of different devices, which I think is really important, unless you're a one-to-one school, because at home different children have got access through different means, different types of devices, and obviously you're not you haven't got the power to be able to decide what they've got at home. So it's important that the platform that you're using is accessible by the children. It's simple to use, and it's at the right level for the children you're working with. So primary level children, you might look at a slightly simpler platform, whereas secondary or like FE colleges, you'll be looking at a more complicated platform that can do more, different things.
And I think what we'd probably say is schools at the very beginning take advantage of those offers that are out there. And so we can talk a little bit more about that, can't we?
Yeah, so the DFE have got the offer out there that they will help you set up teams, or they'll help you set up with G Suite for Education. So just get in touch with those, they can help you. But as James said, it's just the system has just got to be flexible, and it's got to be robust, and it's got to work, and it's got to be agile enough, because you don't want people getting lost in it. It's got to be simple, and you can start simply too. So you can start small and then ramp it up, but it really has to suit the purpose of your school.
And it's taking that step beyond now, isn't it? Sending out email links worked very effectively at the start. It was a great way of working, and we were all thinking on our feet to be able to respond to the pandemic and the lockdown situation. Now schools will have developed that further. Certainly the schools that we're working with and we've seen or have asked us for help have actually got great systems in place and are in a really strong position, even though they want to do even better and develop even further. If you are struggling with capability from the ground up, get those systems, take advantage of the offer with Microsoft Teams or with the Google platform to develop those. Also remember the EdTech demonstrator schools. So if you go to the EdTech demonstrator website, we'll produce a link at the very end of this webinar. There's schools right across the country that can support you and get you set up and start getting systems in place. Because that support can run for about up to a half a term. So you can get everything you need set up. You can get a strategic view for use of technology in schools to support your remote learning. So we would say if you are starting from the ground up, those things are there for you. Otherwise, start thinking about the successes you've had. So look back. So I certainly think within our school, we have learned a lot through live lessons and the way that we've worked in combination with our learning management system, Seesaw, that we've been using. And so Google Meet has been our platform for live lessons, and we've been able to integrate that. So we'll be delivering live lessons with extension work. So it's a bit of a blended learning approach in the sense that you can deliver a live lesson, you can then link to a Seesaw activity that children will complete, and then pick that up maybe later in the day or the following day with a further live lesson. And it will allow you to emulate what you could do in the classroom anyway. And one of the advantages I think we've found is we've troubleshooted over time the issues of getting devices to pupils. And I think for that, schools have got to be really creative, and we're all going to have different pressures and difficulties around that and different challenges. And I think that could be one of the key barriers that schools are having to be creative to overcome. But if you can overcome that, and you've got a platform that's very universally accessible, I think that gives you the very best chance of getting access to everyone, doesn't it, James?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I mean, all the platforms are accessible on mobile devices, so just on a mobile phone, but all the way up to using them on a tablet, whether it's Android, an Amazon tablet or an iPad, and then onto Chromebooks and Windows laptops, Macs. So they're all accessible on all platforms, which makes it easier for us to be able to get devices into children's hands. Even if there's people are struggling with lack of internet access and no device, just a simple mobile phone that runs on a simple Android system would give them access to Microsoft Teams, Google Classroom, Seesaw, Canvas, all those different ones that are out there. So it is about having a platform that is accessible and can go on those different devices. And don't forget, most schools have got devices sitting in school, so it's looking at ways that maybe you can put those into children's hands who are off-site as well.
That's a really good point. I think solving those device challenges is going to be important, and we've seen some brilliant ways of schools have done it through appeals to parents for old mobile phones, all sorts of ways that have been really effective, haven't we? And Sarah, picking up a point from the previous question, really, I think one of the things that's a big gain out of the lockdown is an increased proficiency for pupils in these IT skills, being able to work with Google Classroom, with Microsoft Teams, and Google Meet. That's a really big strength that schools can build on, isn't it? Children with those layered skills, and that helps us with remote learning.
Yeah, and teachers too. You just don't want this to be lost. And I saw a tweet the other day about how they said it was a shame that it took a global pandemic for schools to realise how technology could transform their teaching and learning. But it can, and it has, and people should carry on with these skills and teaching them to the children too. They can't be lost now.
And it shows you the resilience of the profession, really, to be quite constantly creative and innovative, to find new solutions. And I think that's one of the best stories to come out of this difficult situation, is that we rise to that challenge. And schools everywhere have got brilliant stories of the way they've served their pupils and supported their parents. So there is some good to come out of this situation. So let's look at the next question. Let's see. Because one of the issues that you're going to get, so we've got a good strategy there. We've already talked about setting up high quality remote learning, building on the skills that we as staff have, that pupils have developed. Parents have that understanding of how these systems work as well. But suddenly you're back in school full time from September, all being well. But how do you then juggle when you're having to isolate perhaps bubbles? So how do you juggle class teaching and make sure any small groups that are self-isolating get quality remote sessions? And I think this is the hard thing. It's that old adage of how do you split yourself in two as a teacher? It is a challenge, but with technology, it can be slightly easier than perhaps it would be normally. So Sarah, what willing these two groups? Can you manage it? Have you got some good strategies for us?
Yeah, and this is I think this is difficult, and for teachers it will be really difficult. And I think a lot of teachers would worry about this because you don't want to add to workload. So with your quality planning, hopefully you've thought about how you're going to replicate that in the classroom. That you could record yourself over your slides. Hopefully your slides will already be in place. If you do a slide or a smartboard, however you present, all you have to do is get that remotely on. And it can be after the lesson itself, if we think about it. It doesn't have to be right there and then. You've got to have your core hours of teaching, but you could record ready for later on. There is ways you can split yourself. So you can definitely be thinking about utilising the technology in your classroom. Or don't reinvent the wheel. So there is other things out there like Oak National, if you need to draw on that. But you can, we'll have a chat in just a second about recording yourself over your slides. And that is something you could really quickly do. And then you will have your class teaching and you'll have your remote sessions as well.
Brilliant. And obviously having that backdrop of resources from the Oak National Academy is so helpful, because you can draw on that across a wide range of subjects, and having them running for the next year will be really beneficial. It's also great to watch, isn't it, for teachers, James, just to get an idea of how to develop some of those strategies to record your own, because there's no substitute for that child's own class teacher. But actually these examples are really helpful for schools going forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really useful to watch them to see, you know, how easily it can be done with just a simple presentation and using some screen recording software to be able to record yourself with your screen. And it makes for a really good video that can then be used, and not just be used for the children that are in self-isolation either. So using the technology in your classroom, you could split yourself in half to create a video that works really well with a group of children in your classroom, to give them an alternative, like introduction to a lesson. So basing it around their ability and differentiating. So almost like splitting yourself in half, so that you're also becoming like a support staff member and the teacher, so that you are teaching one set of work to a set of children while also teaching the main set of work to the class using the board. So if you were looking at it from like that point of view, if you're looking at the children as self-isolating, their work could also be the same as work that with the group of children they'd normally probably work with at their level. They could also be doing that work on your learning management platform with the recorded videos and stuff as well. So it's not just for one child you're creating for a group of children. And then that should then, hopefully, if it was for like a higher level group of children, you could then put that greater input and greater work into the children that need the gap narrowing, and work with those children more closely, while the children that are a bit more independent can just get on with it and work on it by themselves.
And I think that greater fluidity is going to be a feature going forwards that will be of real benefit, won't it? That chance to obviously develop children's autonomy and independence to secure learning, while actually allowing teachers to be very flexible in looking at specific gaps as they arise, because, you know, our diagnostic teaching is going to pick things out over the coming weeks and months, where we'll need to do some intervention, whether that's through the catch-up program that we've got as well, and the flexibilities there, or whether that's using technology to give children the chance to secure their learning by following examples either that you've pre-recorded or from from other places such as the Oak National Academy. So lots of opportunities to juggle and develop learning there. But actually what doesn't change in all of that is the teaching and learning. That's always the same. This is just technology enabling that to be facilitated as efficiently, as effectively as possible. So we would just say, don't get bogged down in the technology. Technology should be easy and simple to use, and it should help and enable your teaching, not the other way around. It shouldn't be about you figuring things out. Good technology is simple. It's a bit like good mathematics, isn't it? The connections are there, and they're made very easily. So yeah, I think that hopefully helps out with that question. And that flexibility is something that the teaching profession is used to running with. So I don't think we'll be any strangers to that one.
No.
Okay, so we've just had a little look through the guidance and looked at some of the recommendations that the DfE have made and how we can perhaps best meet them manageably when we've got all pupils hopefully back in school from September onwards. So this question, how do you make sure that pupils have ideally daily contact with teachers as set out in the remote learning guidance? So for that one, it is an ideal. It is something that you want to set out to try and do daily contact, but it might be you've got a lot of groups working remotely. So as we come back together for this one, what's the best approach for doing that? So James, thinking about daily contact, but thinking about balancing it, and what are your suggestions?
Yeah, so it's a tricky one with obviously having that daily contact with the children that are remote. And it depends if it's a full class, if it's your bubble that's off, then it is slightly easier to handle because you can run your live lessons, you can obviously do your recorded screens with your explaining videos, but then it's also important to be able to have that contact to be able to assist the children that are struggling. So it might be that you could set up just a small period of time, maybe later on in the day, like in the afternoon, where children could drop in. So you could offer drop-in sessions, which is through a live meeting. So it could be like through Google Meet or Microsoft Teams, where the children could drop in and ask questions, or it could be done in a different way. So if your learning platform allows it, you could just have messages with children, so you could have voice messages, or you could record little video messages that you could post out to children, and children could also then post their messages back to you. So for example, if a child is struggling with a piece of work, they could very easily put a quick message on that piece of work to the teacher saying, "Hi, I'm struggling with this, can you help me?" The teacher could then say, put a little message back, or say, "Yeah, no problem." Just make a very simple little video back to them to explain it, or they can say, "Well, come and join us at the drop-in session. Here's the link," and it just creates that flow of discussion between the teacher and the pupils, like you would in the classroom. The child puts their hand up, says they need help. You go and help them. And this is the same thing. They're just asking for help in a slightly different way. And obviously you can't stand with them and work with them that way. But if you're doing it through like a live lesson or something, as you get more confident with using software, you can start using things like Jamboard or the OneNote application in Teams that would allow you to share the screen and share an interactive whiteboard and actually explain it live there and then on the interactive whiteboard. Invite the children to work on that interactive whiteboard with you so you can understand that they've got the concept as well. And that's the same way you should be doing it in the class.
That level of balance is really helpful as well, isn't it? So you've got a live lesson you might have done, but then you've got the follow-up work on your learning management system. You've got the chat function to be able to develop explanations further. That then follows on in a further live lesson. So yeah, to think about there, isn't there? Sarah, anything to add on this? Because obviously it doesn't just mean you've got to be doing all of that every day. There's a range of options.
No, and we just, our previous webinar talked about teacher voice and like the importance of teacher voice. And sometimes it's just that drop in to say, "Are you okay? Can I help?" And that can be a really quick message. It could be a phone call. It could be a tiny little video. You've just popped on to your learning management system to say, "Is everyone okay? Catch me at this time." And just putting yourself out there a little bit for pupils to talk to, because they do like to talk to their teacher. It's important.
Hey, excuse me there. So I think we have an answer to that one. Let's have a look at the next question. Hopefully my voice will come back. Okay. So we're now going to look at some how-to ways of helping you to use some simple programs to develop your online presence a little bit further. So what can you use to record yourself doing explainer videos for your class? So James, I think I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, okay, so explainer videos are really important. That's what we've been talking about really throughout the whole of this webinar and this Q&A, is the fact that it's important that you are recording your screen and putting yourself out there. So there's some really simple applications out there that allow you to do it. So for example, you could use Loom, which allows you to record your screen with a picture of you at the same time. And you can very easily put yourself on there with that. It then gives you a web link, which you can then embed into any platform, or you could download the video and put it into your platform that way. There's also capabilities of screen recording on an iPad, or even the screen recording facilities built into laptops. As well, and Macs. So there's lots of screen recording capabilities out there. It's just finding one that's simple and easy to use from your point of view. I know obviously we've been using Loom in school to be able to do our things, and that's worked really, really well. Teachers found it really simple, really easy to use, and it's been really accessible by the children. But I have seen out there on social media people using things like Screencastify as well, which is exactly the same sort of thing. Or even some teachers have used Zoom. So they've just put themselves in their own little meeting with Zoom, presented their screen, and then there they are on top, and they've created their little video with it that way. The joy of all of these products is the fact that they're free. So you're not having to pay for anything. They're all there, ready to be used. They are really simple. It might sound difficult, but they are really simple to use. And it's amazing the effect that you can create at the end of it, even to the point of being, like drawing on presentations in PowerPoint. So it's recording your drawing as well, or drawing other things, like if you're using like Smart software or Promethean software, you can present your screen presenting that software, and then you can be writing on the board as if you would be in the classroom. And it creates a really effective video. The important thing, I think, with the videos is to keep it a good length as well, not to go too in depth with it and go too long. Otherwise, we have found capabilities with stream and stuff sometimes causing issues as well. So, and obviously children's engagement drops off if it goes on for a long time. And we did talk about in our last webinar as well about using Loom, but we also spoke about using something called Edpuzzle. So you could record yourself and then use Edpuzzle to question the children as they're going along. And then that will give you feedback and give you some assessment materials as well, based on what you're putting out there for them. So there's lots of different capabilities out there.
We have a video on YouTube on how to use the screen recorder on the iPad. And the screen record on the iPad is a whole screen record. So you could split screen. So you can have your teaching material on one side, and you could have a whiteboard on the other side and be modelling as you record the whole screen.
It's finding those simple solutions, and I'm very pleased to say my voice is back, which is great news. It is keep it simple. Work within your ecosystem. So work within what works for you. Whether you've got an iPad, you screen record. If you want to use something like Loom, there's so many different products. However, they all do the same thing, and they all operate in largely the same way. And what we'd say is keep it simple for a start. So doing, recording yourself and what you're doing. And go from there. But as you layer in other apps, as you use Edpuzzle, or if you use things like Kahoot to get questions and get good feedback, building interactivity into mini sessions, because we know about concentration time is a lot shorter when you're working online on a screen. So keeping it very concise is really helpful. And I think, whichever software you use, it doesn't matter. Just start doing it. And actually that confidence will come. And certainly you'll see you'll have a wide range of how-to videos. And once you've got them, you can use them again and again. You know, it's something you can reuse, which is the beautiful thing of having a bank, which we're finding on our EdTech website. How about that? We will put that at the end, everybody. So let's move on to the next question. And we've got a few quick fire questions just to finish up now. We are aware of attention spans on webinars as well, so we will be keeping those short. But we've had a few questions around differentiation and how do I differentiate online learning? So Sarah, we'll come to you on differentiation.
Yeah, all platforms.
Because it is asked, isn't it, about how you do it. So talk us through it.
So all platforms, I'm thinking about Google Classroom, Seesaw, they have a way that you can assign work just to certain children, one child if necessary. So they're all built in where you could build a different activity or a different explainer video, and you could pop it to a certain group of children, or again, just to one child if they were struggling. So that's all built in. The assigning process in LMSs, VLEs, they assign out to however many children you would like, really.
And if you're thinking about a mastery approach anyway, we're going to be pitching a high expected level. We're looking at accessibility. So I think some of the thinking as well is going to be about children accessing and how you would emulate the scaffolding you do in the classroom electronically. And that can be a challenge, but actually you're still able to direct teach, aren't you, James, in very much the same way. And you could target work with groups if necessary online. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So as Sarah's just said, you can easily target different groups in the platforms with the different tools that are there, and you can make the work available to them. So even if you are creating a piece of work that's available for like a higher level child or group of children, you could then make that available to the children who are working like a little bit lower down later on after they've completed their work as well, very easily by just distributing it out to those different groups. So yeah, it works really easily, and it's just the same way as how you do it in class.
I think one of the bonuses as well is if you're online and you have got an isolated bubble and you've got a teaching assistant or a high-level teaching assistant with you as the teacher, you can actually break out into different rooms, and you can do that by just setting up 2 different rooms and invites. Or if you're using capabilities, for example, within Zoom, I know there's a Chrome extension we're exploring at the moment that does similar work on this, is you could actually assign it within your meeting as you get really confident. So actually there's no reason to think any differently than how you do in the classroom, but we would always advocate start simply and then look more complex. But some of the 5 lessons that we're thinking about having to do as we come back in September, we'll have that functionality to be able to do direct teaches to groups and to the rest of the class simultaneously. And I think that's quite interesting as well. And again, that comes with confidence and time. But I'm sure you'll find in your schools lots of ways of approaching that. But keep thinking about the classroom and trying to emulate that and use the technology to support you is our advice.
Yeah, definitely. And just to add to that as well, there's some new functionality that's coming out in Google Meet very soon, which will also allow you to break out into rooms live within the Google meeting. So all the children start at the start of the session, and then you could break them out to work with TAs or in different groups or in groups by themselves, as long as there's someone there monitoring it. So yeah, that functionality is there, work really well.
And that comes back to the safeguarding we've done in previous webinars, doesn't it, Sarah, about having a moderator, if you can, who's looking at all of these things. If not, you as the teacher or the teaching team would have to take on some of that role.
Having a moderator allows your teachers to teach. So it just takes the pressure off everything else that's going on. They don't need to worry about. They can solely focus on that teaching and learning, which will be so important. And then a moderator takes control of everything else. So yeah, absolutely, moderate away, because it's going to be so beneficial for your pupils and for the teachers too.
Brilliant. Okay, I think we'll go on to the next quick fire. So we also talked about assessing remote learning. I think a lot of this we've covered earlier, but we've seen from those of you working with learning management systems, it's something that's come quite naturally to all of us as teachers. It's not really been too dissimilar. So how do you assess remote learning? So Sarah, assessing remote learning, most teachers have actually really found this not too dissimilar to assessing in class.
Again, yeah, you've got your pupils' work. You look at it as a teacher. You can see how they've responded. You can mark it accordingly, and assess pretty much how you would anyway in a classroom by looking at children's work. And you can add conversations to that. So if you really want to get deeper and you want to understand what they understand, then you can ask questions in your LMS2, and that helps with assessment. But there's also lots of different things that you could build into your remote learning to get assessment. So quizzes are great. There's things like Google Forms, Microsoft Forms, Kahoot, quizzes, loads of quizzing type apps that send data and then you can analyze, and they send it straight to Sheets or Excel. So you build up an assessment portfolio just from children taking a quiz. So again, workload is quite good. You could assess at the beginning of a topic and at the end of a topic to check progress. But yeah, in terms of workload, those kind of quizzing apps, they send things straight to something that you can analyze it in. So they will be perfect.
Lots of lessons to learn there, aren't there, with using those kinds of tools to save time, but get quite a lot of really useful, quite forensic information about where to pitch your next lesson, James.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're really useful, not just for remote learning either. They're really useful to be used in the classroom. So very easily in the classroom, you can be using these apps like Kahoot or Google Forms to be gathering that information and assessing the children and having that presented back to you in a really simple way that you can then analyze and compare. So you can even run like times tables quizzes on it, spelling quizzes, all sorts of different things like that. You know, gone are the days where you need to read out a list of spellings to children and then writing them down and then marking them all together. You can do it all in a quizzing app that will mark it for you there and then and present you the results in a spreadsheet. So it's workload, yeah, so much better.
And Sarah, as you've outlined quite brilliantly, it's more interactive for children as well.
Yeah, they're like, especially Kahoot and quizzes and things like that. They're literally game show type. So the children can interact and it's just super engaging. They're very bright. It's really like playing quiz games at home on a console, and it's just something that I think would really pull them in a little bit so they can really engage with it. But from a teacher's point of view, it gives you so much. So it's so engaging for them, but for you as teachers, it gives you a wealth of data.
So actually quite an easy question. I think we'll be using the remote learning assessment tools to help us in class. So often the other way around. Brilliant. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of this Q&A. I'd just like to say a big thank you to Sarah Crowhurst, to James Crowhurst for being a part of this EdTech panel for me. It's been brilliant to share with you some of our thoughts about coming back with September and what this blended approach could look like. We do obviously have our website and its dedicated EdTech section that you can see there that will link up, and we will throw that in the chat just so you can access it very easily as well. Also, don't forget, if you want to get support from an EdTech demonstrator school, as if by magic, James and Sarah have just popped that up there as well. So if you click on the link that you can see now in the chat, that will take you through to the EdTech homepage on the London Grid for Learning. And you can actually click the button right at the top of the page, fill in a very simple form and get up to a half-term support from an EdTech demonstrator in your region. So really important to do that. That's what they're there for. They're there to support you. We love working with our schools. We hope to, all of you, just to wish you all a very good summer holiday. That's the end of our series of webinars for this half term. But however, after the summer, we're looking forward to coming back. We're going to be looking again at blended learning, aren't we? But also about balancing screen time going forwards and how to utilize some of these skills from remote learning in the classroom, and also to enhance home learning through homework, but also to cope with those periods of isolation that we'll no doubt potentially have to face. So from all of us at Elizabeth Woodville, we'd just like to say a big thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful holiday, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you all in the autumn term. And I'd just like to say one last thank you to Sarah Crowhurst and to James Crowhurst for joining me this afternoon. Thanks, everybody, and take care.
Thank you. Bye.